everything that we need to know about what harms us and what heals us is all out there. And you don't hear it on mainstream media. Very rarely is somebody daring to have the guts to actually speak against this because, as Doug Ford said, well, you're not going to have any premier sort of, stand against the medical authorities, because who wants to be responsible for that? And yet they seem to be ruling from a culture of fear and terror. And we're going to be talking about that and about our freedoms. We have an incredible guest today. His name is Major Russ Cooper. And what we are going to be talking about is going to be so open and honest that we are going to have to move over to odyssey.com. And so many of you know how to get there. In the description, right underneath where you're watching me, you will probably, on Facebook, you'll be able to see there's a link there. All you do is click on the link and it should get you right to Odyssey. If you're having any trouble with that, let us know. And the conversation that we're about to have is to help you. It's to understand what are your rights and freedoms in Canada and how have they been violated, and what is the mechanism by which the fear mongering is being used to subvert, well, our free thinking and to stop us from feeling like we can just make the kind of decisions that we've seen actually, taking place with some of the guests that we've had on recently. People standing up, people going to court, people subpoenaing their medical authorities in the nation. That's a great idea, isn't it? It's a good idea. And so head on over to odyssey.com, and we have lots more today. And Major Russ Cooper is going to be sharing some of his experiences and what he has been doing in his retirement years after learning what he's learned through his job on what we can do to stand up for ourselves and what a serious and grave moment this is. So let's head over. We're going to do the swish. I love this part. And then we're going to say goodbye to Facebook, and you can so I'm talking through the switch now, and so we'll say goodbye to Facebook, but you can meet us on odyssey.com right now. And so I would like to invite to the show, without further ado, I do have some clips and stuff that we'll see if we can play throughout this interview, but Major Russ Cooper, 40 plus years experience across a wide spectrum of aviation sectors, including the flight operational, engineering, certification, and project management fields. In the military environment, he operated as a modern era fighter pilot and staff officer. Former role resulted in combat decorated services as a CF-18 Squadron Deputy Commander, while the latter culminated in the procurement of national fighter weapons resources and the coordination of the Canadian Air Force Capital Equipment Program. And so thank you so much, Major Cooper. You have a lot more that I could read about what you've done, and I realize that there's lots there, including working with Air Canada. But welcome to the show. Can you add anything more that we should know today about your long list of expert things that you've been involved in?
Well, thanks for having me on the show, Laura Lynn. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
As you said previously, I really should be fully retired, but a couple of years ago, I saw things happening that I just had to. I just felt compelled to start speaking out, and I guess I felt that way because there are a few seminal points in my aviation background that kind of brought me to that point. As you said, I was an F-18 pilot in the military. I had about 28 years in the military. A lot of them were as a fighter pilot on 104 Starfighters and then the CF-18. I had the honor to get rotated into the first Persian Gulf War as deputy commander of the Canadian fighter contingent that was executing the war against Saddam Hussein and his Republican Guard. And that was quite a seminal event, and I came away with that from that experience with a few thoughts in mind. I went on from there to leave the military, go to Bombardier for a bit. Then I wound up in Air Canada as a pilot. And during 9/11, on the actual day of 9/11, I was flying a DC-9 from Quebec City to Toronto
Wow.
at the time of the event. So while we were about 100 miles outside of Toronto. We called into Toronto to establish initial communications, and right off the bat, they cleared us to land. Well, they don't clear you to land in Toronto in most cases until you're on top of the runway because the traffic is so busy, and they just can't give you a landing clearance until everything is clear. So 100 miles out, we got clearance to land, and we knew that something was up.
Wow.
So we got down on the ground, and sure enough, uh, taxiing into the airport, Toronto International, and all this iron, all these aircraft are parked everywhere, just chock-a-block aircraft parked everywhere. Went into the ready room, and we got into the ready room in time to see, I think, the second tower fall, and that was another seminal event in my mind because I was flying at the time that these other chaps, these colleagues of mine, were suffering and dying in their cockpits. So based on that, and my experience with the military in the Middle East in security, and I was also responsible for coordinating intelligence in the Middle East for the squadron. I started offering my security services to the Air Canada Pilots Association Union and wrote security plans for them. And I did a deep dive. Anytime you're in a situation like this, you have to analyze the threat. So I did a deep dive into the threat, and I looked at everything that the perpetrators of 9/11 said. I looked at everything they said, and people were saying that they were cowards, but I saw it differently. I didn't see them as cowards. I saw them as kamikazes. These are like the guys from the Second World War, the Japanese kamikazes who used to take their lives in their own hands and fly into cruisers and battleships.
Wow.
These guys had a cause, and so I felt I had to dig deep into that cause to see where it was coming from. And over the course of the next, I guess, several years, I got wrapped up in civil aviation security. All that said, I left Air Canada. I retired when I turned 60 years old. Then I started engineering. Then I started test pilot uh, work in civil aviation. I was a Transport Canada delegate, a flight test delegate, and then I basically retired. But then in 2017, I watched Motion M103 unfold, and Motion M103, and I could see this use of the term Islamophobia was problematic. I mean, what were they talking about? Islamophobia, if you look at the word and you break it down, it's an irrational fear of Islam. And from all my studies of the threat, of the jihad, of Sharia law, all the things that kind of fold into what happened in 9/11, I said, I don't think it's that irrational to fear certain aspects of Islam. And so I started speaking out, and I started writing papers, and I started writing to Parliament, and I started hooked up with a few folks who are of a similar mind. And in the spring of 2017, we formed Canadian Citizens for Charter Rights and Freedoms, which which opposed this false narrative of Islamophobia. We saw it as a false narrative, but that was quite successful, and actually it got to the point where we had petitions with tens of thousands of signatures. We had people writing into their MPs, and as a matter of fact, Brian Trost on his Facebook page 2 days before they took the vote on the motion, he clocked 900,000 inputs, the vast majority of which were unfavorable towards the motion. And he said that was the most input anybody ever had email wise in the history of Canadian Parliament. So people were really, really not on side with this whole narrative of Islamophobia. But so that started C3RF. And since then, I always thought that it would kind of go away, and things would return to normal. But what we found is that week by week, month by month, year by year, attacks on our freedom of speech, our freedom of association, our freedom of assembly, all those things that are fundamental rights in the Canadian Charter, were being attacked vociferously. Just a week didn't go by. You would hear about the government giving $695 million to mainstream media to what? In my mind, to buy them off. That's a valid question, I think. We saw digital charters come into play where they started patrolling the internet for what people were saying and was it hateful or not. Now we're seeing Bill C-10 and C-36 come to the fore, and these are egregious attacks on freedom of speech because they actually call for putting people under house arrest because they might be thinking about something hateful. It's not even anything you do anymore. It's something that you might be thinking of doing.
Right.
So this has all really gone downhill really, really fast. And now we see very, very worrisome developments with this whole, you called it medical tyranny. There's something going on here because a lot of I remember I talked about the false narrative that was M103, Islamophobia. We have all kinds of false narratives flooding the public space now that are being propped up as scientific and truthful. And as you saw from Rand Paul's statement there, these are not coming from science. This is quackery. A lot of it is just quackery, and everyone's getting taken up by this whole process of you call it psychology of fear. And I think you're bang on because I think what's happening is that they float these false narratives. If you put your head above the ramparts and say, hey, wait a minute, I don't think that's true, you get clobbered. You get ad hominem attacks, you get insulted, you might lose your job. People like you say are losing their job. Sandra is being told that she's got to wear a mask, and it really got to me when you talk to her. She said, they came to her and said, "Why are you the one? Why are you the one that's making all the trouble?" Well, I got to flip that around. I got to ask the people who are forcing these mandates on regular citizens, why are you doing this to me? Where is your evidence? Where are the facts? Is this really helpful? Or have you looked at the other side of how much harm you're introducing into a society by locking us down, by mandating vaccines, by doing this and by doing that? No one is looking at the other side, and it's awful funny that our mainstream media is not asking the questions. The judicial system is missing in action. This should be their bread and butter. These charter challenges should be bread and butter, but they're
Absolutely.
delaying them. They're throwing them aside. They're not wanting to deal with them. So we have. I just recently told someone, a chap who wrote into me. He's talking about he's going to talk to his doctor because he's had enough of this, and he wants to see where the evidence is that is forcing him to get a mask, put on a mask, or take a vaccine. He's starting to stand up for himself like Sandy is, and we're seeing this more and more each day. And I think we're coming to a moment here where we're going to see a sudden shift. We're going to see a pivot point come in here, and I
I
think we're
hope
not far
so.
away.
Right, I hope so. When you were bringing up Bill C-10 and C-36 that they're trying to, that kind of got squashed, but they've got a new thing. While all the definitions would draw upon existing law, so wait, they're calling this. The government wants to get rid of some porn on the internet because it's harmful and dangerous. So recently, the government, the Liberal government here in Canada said that they want to deal with some of these things, and they throw in things like, well, of course, child porn and things that are not right. And we're like, hey, that sounds wonderful. But then all of a sudden, in with all of the things that they want to be able to quash on the internet is this little thing called hate speech. And so they need
Ah,
a digital safety commissioner to deal with this. And
that's right.
that's where we've
That's
got a
right.
problem because hate
So
speech
remember,
is
yeah, it all
subjective.
sounds so sweet. It all sounds
Right.
so sweet, Laura Lynn, when they say, well, we're gonna combat porn. But it really sounded sweet when they said, we're gonna flatten that curve. Give us 2 weeks, not 3 weeks tops, and give our medical institutions the time to crank up and take care of this. And then that's all we need, flatten the curve. And look at where we are now. We're a year and a half later, and it's not getting better. It's after a year and a half. We don't have any therapeutics in place to deal with this. All we have is vaccines that are being forced down our throats. And
Well,
now we're
and
talking about a
we
fourth wave. A fourth wave.
yes, I know. And I just want to mention something that I had meant to talk about earlier, but Moderna is going to build a vaccine plant, and I do have this on a share if you still have it there. But Moderna is going to build a vaccine plant in Canada with federal cash. And I was saying to, my assistant, but federal cash, is that like Canadian federal cash? Champagne to an ounce. So company is set to build a plant, source ingredients, and finish the product here. So they're making an awful lot of money, regardless of the VAERS. We know that the adverse reactions are now up to 60,000 people on one site, and there's several sites for these, bad vaccine events. And this might be deemed hate speech for me to bring this up because I might be causing vaccine hesitancy at some point in the future under the Liberal government, who's now investing in a Moderna vaccine plant here in Canada.
There are many, many questions to be asked about that kind of a deal. There are many, many questions to be asked about what the government is doing with the public purse over the last 18 months. We've gone almost $400 billion into deficit. That's not debt. That's deficit. That's just a one year thing. And we were told to flatten the curve, and we're going to take care of our medical system to deal with the virus. And of this 400 billion, how much of it went to our medical system? Well, I can tell you,
Exactly.
very, very little. As a matter of fact, when they had the budget talks back in December or so, provinces were clamoring for a bit more money to shore up their medical systems, and the federal government basically told them to pound salt. No, they did something else with the money. I forget what it was. I think they gave it to a foreign country someplace or something, $15 billion or something. So there are many, many questions to be asked. And I say, if you pop your head above the parapet to ask the question, they probably wouldn't nail you with hate speech, Laura Lynn. They'd probably hit you with misinformation, is what they do. Now they're
Right.
making misinformation illegal. So
Right.
this is where we're going.
Well, you can
And this is
read
the state of
about,
our union.
yeah, July 29th, basically the Liberals' online harms bill would create a digital safety commissioner to police the internet. So you can read about that on the National Post. I mean, this is the real stuff. PureFlix, there's something I'd like to say. I just signed up for PureFlix, and I dropped my Pornhub subscription. And so, oh, good, I got a laugh from the crew here. But PureFlix, it has some really
Good for
good.
you.
Yeah, I'm really evolving. So, it's got some good stuff, right? And we actually had this guy, Hercules, Kevin Sorbo, on the
Sorbo.
show.
Sorbo.
And
Yeah.
he's doing some great shows. He's a real family guy, and he's putting out good content. We all got to get, to be part of that. But to your point, we're in trouble. Like when I found out that Moderna's building a site here, it doesn't seem to matter that kids are getting heart conditions. Children are dying actually of taking COVID-19 shots. Not as many dying from getting COVID-19 in and of itself. And everyone's silent on it. Mainstream is just shut up. They're probably getting money, and our rights and freedoms seem to be, put aside. And here you are, sir. You're a major, and I appreciate that you have fought for our rights and freedoms and that you've spent a lifetime looking into that. But I'm not sure if you're disappointed at what you're seeing in this nation at this point.
Well, I'm seeing I'm seeing fear take hold, and fear is. This is not the first time this has happened. Throughout history, you look at dictatorships and how they operate, and fear is prime. Goebbels, or not Goebbels, but Goring, during his Nuremberg trial, he was interviewed by an American intelligence officer, and he said, "Well, how did you get all of Germany on side, to do these terrible things?" And Goering said, it wasn't difficult. All you need to do is instill fear. And once you have a fearful population, you have a controllable population. And then what happens is that the people who aren't fearful, the people that pop their heads above the parapets, you look at those people, you point your finger and you say to all the fear people, all the people who have fear, there's your enemy. They're trying to stop you from having a safe, healthy, and prosperous life. There's your enemy. Go get them. And now you've set that play in motion between the oppressed and oppressor. And all of a sudden, you've got people mounting cattle cars and going off to Auschwitz. So
Wow.
this is, I'm afraid that I don't think that's alarmist. I think what we're seeing here is we're seeing a lot of things come together that are speaking to using fear for some sort of purpose. And
Absolutely.
you met,
Look at what's, sorry to interrupt you, but you're really bringing up very good points. And look at how they're separating the vaccinated and the unvaccinated. And they're painting a picture in mainstream media, which is so false because we have shown the doctors on this show that are proving that actually the vaccinated are going to end up being very deadly because the variants and all of that, it's going to, natural immunity is being stopped, and the spike proteins are turning into little Velcro bits that are, not going to be fighting the new variants that are coming in any good way at all. And it would be better to have natural immunity. And so, but mainstream media is painting a picture that, hey, if you're not going to get vaccinated, then you're the problem. And that narrative is being pushed out to the basic public, and that's the only place they get their information.
That's and it's not just the mainstream media. It's also our medical folks. I just
Right.
this afternoon watched Ontario's new chief medical officer talk about the unvaccinated being the repositories for these new variants. Well, that doesn't make any sense because immunologists will tell you that you create variants by putting a virus in a situation where it has to change to defeat whatever it is encountering. In this case, a vaccine. So it's the vaccinated people that it makes sense are going to have those variants created as
So
a
you
result of
heard that
their
today.
vaccination.
So the Ontario new
Yeah.
medical expert, the one who
Chief
is,
medical officer, yeah.
yeah, the
Yeah.
chief medical officer, whom we shall all bow to, because they're also smart. They want to vaccinate children 12 and up, and soon children underneath that. She was actually talking about this out loud, like painting the
Oh, that it's
unvaccinated.
it's a
Guy.
gentleman.
It's a
I forget
gentleman.
his name now. He's fairly new. He's from
David Williams.
he, oh, David Williams retired, and this new gentleman
Oh,
just took
David
his
Williams
place.
retired. Oh, okay, and so
Yeah.
we've got a new guy in there.
So
Okay.
yeah, I forget his name, but he is saying that that's why it's critical for everyone to get vaccinated. And when you look at the numbers, I mean, Ontario is like 80% one dose, 65% two doses. I mean, how much more vaccination do you need before you can say that you have herd immunity? But
Right.
that's another false narrative because these vaccines are not giving us herd immunity
Right.
because the vaccine, and it's obvious because we're getting all these breakthrough infections. So these vaccines are not doing the job that they say they're supposed to do for us. So
And that is bringing on the fear. People are beginning, they're so fearful of this. So somebody even on Fox News in the States, which is supposed to be more right leaning and have a balance, this guy went off about the unvaccinated in a raging tirade, apparently, if I'm to read it right. And that the unvaccinated are just ruining everything. So this is beginning to be put out there everywhere. And that fear you're talking about, this is how you control a society. And you begin pitting
this
people against others.
exactly now we have the oppressed and the oppressor situation crop up. We have the vaccinated and we have the unvaccinated. So here you have these two groups that are one is pillaring the other, and it's going to end badly because that's ultimately where these things go. When you divide people along these types of lines, all you create is conflict. You don't create, unity of action and any kind of a cure.
Right.
The other thing is, you talk about children. Actually, they're doing trials right now on 6 months to 11-year-old children, and the idea is to get the vaccine out to them when these trials are complete in 2022. So that's just around the corner. And now you talk about this whole thing about vaccines, and no one mentions the fact, and this is crazy, that these are still experimental vaccines. They're not fully approved by the FDA or any worldwide agency. They're only approved for emergency use. So, what is the logic behind giving children an emergency use only vaccine when it's not an emergency if they don't take it? Because children do very well without vaccines, and they do very well with their strong immune systems in fighting off this virus. And the numbers show that. So, why are we giving vaccines to children? What the heck is going on here?
That's what everybody's asking. And, Fauci the other day, you always, it's kind of funny. He's like a predictor of what they're all talking about behind the scenes. And I thought, how could they do that? I heard that the FDA, if they were going to give approval, could not possibly do it for another year or two because
Mhm.
you have to have all the appropriate. And sometimes you shut down a vaccine after 5 people or 50 people are dead,
Yes.
depending on the vaccine. You go, oh no, no, this is too costly, we're not going to do it. Now we have over 60,000 dead, and then in the EU it's another 20,000. So how is Fauci the other day, on a broadcast I was watching, he said we're hoping to have FDA approval maybe by August. you
Yes.
know you
Yeah. He's
have to
prepping us.
wonder, right?
He's
And
prepping
is the
us.
FDA being compromised? Because if they're going to approve something like this, then they got to them, right? And they keep getting to people.
Well, just think of this, Laura Lynn. I mean, everyone, all of the authorities, they're in up to the next. They're next. They've promised us that this is safe and efficient. This is the bee's knees. This is the solution to our problem. They can't turn around now. Or they should turn around. It's the honorable thing to do, but they can't turn around now. So they're going to dig themselves in deeper. And the way they're going to do that is they're going to make these approvals happen. The FDA is going to approve these vaccines because they're in too deep. They can't turn. They can't do a 180 on where they've already taken us. And I'm afraid that's where we're going. And all that's left. I mean, if we're talking about all of these institutions being corrupted this way, all we have
Yes.
left is us. All we have left is the citizen.
Well, I'm wondering if I could play for you a 2-minute clip with somebody in Texas, a physician assistant, speaking out on this very issue you're talking about. And I think this is what you're saying. We've got to have the community in our sphere of influence, like Sandy today, like other people we've had on this
Yeah.
show that are standing up. Take a look at it. I'd love to have your feedback.
Let's get to the most important part because I'm very limited on time and I could sit here for hours and talk to you about this. The unvaccinated theory is nothing but BS, okay? Does anyone here know, especially the medical professionals here, that the CDC about a month and a half ago changed the requirement for hospitals and clinics to count a COVID case? If you are now vaccinated, you don't have to register that person as a COVID case if they have COVID. Even if they're in the hospital and dying of COVID, if they were vaccinated, you don't have to count that as a COVID case. Why are people saying, oh, the unvaccinated are filling the hospitals? Because the CDC has literally changed that. So if you get COVID and you're vaccinated, you don't count into the pool of people that are vaccinated. Does anybody here know that? I doubt it. Do we also know of the change in the PCR test? No, I doubt that. So you're a board for education, not health. There's never been a study on social distancing or any of these ridiculous partitioners that are in between you. So you're telling me that you're safe to breathe, but we're not safe to breathe? Even on the CDC, after 15 minutes of being in the same room with somebody, you're breathing in the same air, okay? So let's get past this ridiculousness because it doesn't work. And then the vaccines, just a whole other nutshell case in itself. In 6 months, more people have died from this vaccine than in 20 years of every single vaccine given in America. Let that sink in. In 6 months. 12,000. And the VAERS reporting system, Harvard, who everyone should trust here, did a major study, and they found out that only 1% of all the adverse effects and deaths are actually reported. So imagine that. If 12,000 we know now have died, that's only 1%. 1%.
And I just want to clarify that that number, it's way more than that, because there's several reporting sites, and so somebody came out and basically said, well, on this site there's that many, but on this site there's 45,000, and so it's just going up exponentially every single day. People are dying from this vaccine.
Yeah. Now there's a man that he's akin to the little boy who watched the emperor stroll down the street naked, and actually had the gumption to say, "Hey, the emperor is naked." And then it wasn't until that point that the people, the adults around him, said, "You know what? You're right. That emperor is naked." And so that's what we need: is we need people to tell the truth as they see it, to ask for the facts, to ask for the evidence, and particularly put pressure on our institutions to do their job, because right now they're not doing their job. They're doing someone else's job, and I'm not sure just what the end game is, but there's just too many false narratives out there for this to be anything but a fraud.
Right. So you have started, or like, did you begin this organization that you're now working with in order to highlight the freedoms that Canadians have and how we can, stand up for them?
No, not specifically. We stood up because of M103 and Islamophobia. We didn't like that particular false narrative, but then that was at the very the start of the our federal government, our sitting federal government, and from that point on, it just was a never-ending cavalcade of new things that were coming out to take our freedoms away. Court cases were coming out determining that Trinity Western University couldn't have legal courses because they had a certain Christian mind frame in their teaching doctrine. So they got bounced by the Supreme Court for doing that, and it just went on and on and on. All these liberties that are supposed to be fundamental in nature are being balanced away. The Supreme Court says they are balancing our liberties and freedoms, but what they're doing is they're balancing away individual fundamental freedoms to favor the collective, whether it be a special interest group, a moneyed interest group, or whatever interest group. These rights are slipping away from the individual, and we believe that the most important minority is the individual. It's you could talk about minorities,
I like that.
minorities being this tribe or that tribe or this religion or that religion, but really, when you get right down to it, the most important minority is the individual, because when his or her individual rights are secured, then everyone's rights are secured. And that's why they're called fundamental. And I'm afraid our Supreme Court is dealing them away, and they think they're doing us a favor, but they're not. So we started with about 6 folks back in 2017. You know a couple of them, I think. And right now we're pushing 40,000. So
Wow.
it is really, people are very interested in this. They're very interested in what's happening to our rights and freedoms.
We're interested in security. We're interested in feeling safe. When people have concerns about radical political Islam, it's because there's an element there that doesn't make us feel safe, because it's not a Canadian value. Canadians value that men and women are equal in their worth before God. And that is a Canadian value. We do not adhere to, some of the teachings in the Quran about that, you can beat your wife. And I've had Iman on it, a former Muslim. I've had Salim Mansour on my show. I've had the apostate prophet. Salim, I believe he's still Muslim. Some have left, but they're disclosing some of the things behind here. This is not about being racist. Well, some people are Islamic and they're white people, So it's not about a race, but it is about safety. It's about security in a nation where we have fundamental values that we have built this nation on. They're really Judeo-Christian values. And, America was actually the very first nation to embrace a democratic sort of style. And it's worked out pretty good, except there are forces trying to turn it into a communist Marxist nation right now. But this should be the way that all people love to live, with complete freedom. And yet some societies, some religions do not embrace that. And so when we stand up against that, that should not be something that we are now bullied into being silent when we actually don't feel safe.
Yes. You're talking about our fundamental belief system in Canada, and I think the preamble to the charter says it quite nicely, and I think it frames the whole charter itself. It says that that the country is based on the belief that a belief in the supremacy of God and the rule of law, and that it's all those two concepts are provided for in one short sentence. And I think that says it all, because once you talk about the supremacy of God and the Judeo-Christian ethic and concept, you're talking about individuals, all of us being made in God's image, and therefore being of value and of unique value and deserving of rights that are bestowed upon them, not by governments or not by man-made governments, but by God Himself, a loving God. And that's central to why I think our society has been so successful, because that kind of thought process, that kind of ethic, produces what you call a high trust society. I can trust you because you believe in that concept. You can trust me. So we have as a result, a high trust society that allows us to maneuver ourselves within society in the public space with a lot of confidence and with no fear. But you have a low trust society where you think everybody's out to get you. Well, that's a totally different thing. All of a sudden, you're not maneuvering out in the public space without fear. You're always looking over your shoulder. And when you're looking over your shoulder all the time, you don't have a lot of time left to do positive things. So
Right.
I think that's a critical point that you hit on, that whole
And
bit
now we
about
have an
Judeo-Christian.
extreme fear of this virus that mainstream media has nonstop pushed for a year and a half. And
Yes.
I've had a couple of guests that literally believe it's been almost like a psyop operation by China. And I had actually a really good clip today about China, but I don't think that we got it ready. Shoot, I was watching it and I was thinking we've got to show that. But basically, we are seeing a global takeover, and potentially we have had a virus manufactured in a lab, and whether that's real or not, or to the degree if it's as dangerous as some people say or not, it has caused a fear that has become the pandemic of fear. And now we go out into the highways and byways, and people that don't need to be wearing masks, well, they're wearing masks now still because they're so afraid. And
Yes.
we've done damage, and we've had
Brain
crisis.
damage.
Yes, absolutely. Like it's like PTSD, on a national scale.
If you want to, there are many examples of in the past this type of thing happening, and you can see what is happening right now is very, very close to what happened in Mao's China. He had his whole concept, the way he looked at Marxism, and he believed in lines of effort, mass lines of effort to control populations, to instill fear. He was very, very good at it, and a lot of people lost their lives as a result. But those same kind of tactics, you call it psyops, psychological warfare. I think you're right, and I think you can see a lot of what's going on here now happen in the recent past with what they call color revolutions in Eastern Europe over the past since the 80s, 90s type of thing. So we're seeing things that I kind of categorize under a concept of political warfare. And I think what we're in the midst of is we're under attack. It's political warfare. Our Western military systems don't even know what political warfare is. There are a couple of us that do, but not the ones in any kind of position of power or influence. And it's this political warfare that's being waged on us by people who know what they're doing, and they know how to execute this kind of warfare. And like you say, this whole idea of having a virus spring out of a lab in Wuhan, and then all of a sudden we have the coincidence of people flying out of Wuhan into Canada unopposed, but in China itself, people aren't allowed to fly from Wuhan to other parts of China. Well, that's a heck of a coincidence there. That's that kind of smacks of maybe just too much coincidence. And then from there on, you see this whole coming together of the media, of high tech. Look at high tech and how we talked about, we had to go to Odyssey here because on the previous social media platform, we would have got bounced right off the bat if we would have started talking about some of the stuff we're talking about. So you have the
100%.
medical institutions, you have the media, you have big tech, you have big government. Isn't it kind of a coincidence that these are all coming together with the same message and the same narrative at
All
the
at the
same
same
time?
time.
All at the
All
same
like
time.
as if it's the same script. If you've ever seen the words, that MSNBC will use, that CNN is using, that CBS is using, they've all got their talking points. It's like I feel like we're on the Truman Show on some days. That everybody's got a script and they've got a role and they're all playing it and they're trying to convince us that this is how we're going to do it. And in the end, when we played that clip off the top of the program about Bill Gates and reducing population and him mentioning vaccines, and you're like, we're living that though, like
Yeah.
we've seen thousands and thousands and thousands of deaths that nobody seems to want to talk about, and all under vaccinations. Well, who's behind all of that? Well, it's Bill Gates. They're putting their plan that they've openly talked about into play. And I'm beginning to see, I haven't always wanted to believe all of this, that it's so bad. I didn't want to, but the
It is
evidence
bad.
is mounting and it's bad. It's like a
Well,
takeover.
there are certainly a lot of questions that need to be asked, and they're pretty obvious questions, and are not being asked. It got me. You talk about the media is all in sync. You ever see those collages where usually somebody like Tucker Carlson, will throw up a collage
Yeah.
of news anchors talking about, and today we can report 233 deaths, COVID deaths, and then the next they'll throw up another collage, and a different anchor will say exactly the same words. And it goes on and on and on. You have 10, 15 anchors all saying the same thing from all these different networks, and they're using the same sentencing, the same words.
Yeah.
Now that's kind of, I mean, if it wasn't so worrisome, it'd be funny. And then you
Right.
talk about Bill Gates talking about, hey, we got a good deal for you. We can reduce the world's population by 10, 15%, and that's going to be a great thing. And you think to yourself, wait a minute, did he just say that he's going to wipe out 10% of the population, and that's a great thing? And how come no one's asking questions about that?
Right.
Is that really a good thing?
And I was Bill Gates, good friends with Anthony Fauci. They went to college together, ended up, I believe, staying in the same room together. And a little clip came out about Fauci's wife. Now, I remember hearing this on one of the broadcasts of Amazing Polly, who is amazing, and everyone should follow her. You're going to have to go to BitChute now to find her. She's on, all of the sort of alternative media sites. She's incredible. But she put this information together about Fauci and his wife, but this clip sort of outlines it really well. So I'd like to play that for you. It's short.
What about Pittsburgh? What about Fauci? And what about Mrs. Fauci?
Well, I think this goes to what we talk about a lot, which is this idea of elite merger, in the sense that it's not just that our elites have sold out to the Chinese Communist Party, but I think day by day they resemble them more and more, whether it's the fact that you see Christians getting attacked in public parks or even babies being killed for research. And that's exactly what's happening at the University of Pittsburgh. But what's really interesting, when evil happens, you have to get to the bottom of it, whether it's the Wuhan lab, January 6th, November 3rd. And when you start looking around the NIH, the people who are greenlighting this horrible, really infanticide to occur, I think all roads may just lead to none other than Anthony Fauci's wife. That is an individual named Christine Grady, who, believe it or not, is actually the chief of the Department of Bioethics at the NIH Clinical Center, also the head of the section on human subjects research. And believe it or not, Obama actually appointed her from 2010 to 2017 to serve as a commissioner on his study of bioethical issues presidential commission. And honestly, I think when you just look at what's going on, whether it's these Christians getting attacked in the park or what's going on up at the University of Pittsburgh, our founding fathers would be so appalled, and cultural Marxists and literal Marxists are so happy, because this is exactly what they want to be happening in this country.
Hold it. Only Natalie Winters can dig this up. Nobody else said it. Fauci's wife is head of the human subjects research for in NIH. What Fauci wants to do, his wife then approves? Is that how it works?
Exactly. And remember, this is just coming off of the fact that their whole grant database was taken down. We link that to the Wuhan lab, but maybe that also, was potentially tied to this whole pit bombshell breaking. But yeah, she plays a very, very critical role in approving scientific studies, research grants, and research procedures. So there will be a forthcoming story, but a lot to dig into.
I just want to make the announcement here in War Room that Natalie Winters is now on this Pittsburgh situation and everything about these grants. Bad news, Fauci, and bad news, Fauci's wife, because Natalie Winters gets to the bottom of it. Just ask Peter Daszak how it's turned out for him.
And his kid works at Twitter. Full spectrum dominance.
Elite capture.
Oh man. And his kid works at Twitter. Oh my God. My goodness.
And so they're all connected. So Fauci hatches some scheme with Bill Gates, and they need to get some sort of one of those things, those draft things, or what you put together a grant, and his wife is the one who's an expert on all of that, and she approves all kinds of things, and it's all so inbred, and truly bad people have hatched a plan.
Yeah, I got a feeling, like I was talking before, about a pivot point coming our way, and it always reminds me of the what I call the Rogers cable box moment. Are you familiar with the Rogers cable box?
No, what is that?
Debacle? Well, back in 2003, Rogers Cable, they came out with this idea of negative marketing where they were going to give their customers a new deal, and it was going to cost more. But if you didn't want to pay the extra money, well, then you had to tell Rogers that you didn't want to pay it. So if you didn't say anything or you missed their message, well, then they were going to charge you extra money, and it was their negative marketing scheme. Well, the poop just hit the fan, because people across all of Rogers' customers thought, what the heck is going on here? You're charging me more money. You didn't even tell me you're doing this. You're mocking me. You're disrespecting me. Well, people started lining up at the Rogers outlets with cable box in hand to turn them in. And I remember this because I was one of those people in 2003, and I had to wait a half an hour in line to turn in my cable box because I was so angry with the company for disrespecting me like that.
Right.
And I think there's going to come a moment here where it's starting to break now. People are starting to ask questions. Sanders asking questions. Rand Paul's starting to make some noise. People like you are sticking your heads above the parapets. God love you. And
Thank you.
More and more people are going to understand that they are being disabused. They are being abused. They are being disrespected. They are being mocked. They're being treated like unintelligent beings. And this is going to turn. And it's going to turn, I think, in a big fashion.
I pray that you're right. Your experience must have led you to understand evil in some form. When you're responsible for security, when you have spent your days trying to ensure the safety of Canadians, the safety in different places that you've worked, what have you learned about evil that is helping you? Because you're retired, sir. You could be sitting on a beach somewhere.
Yes. That was
And
the
I
plan.
bet you think about it. Yeah.
That was
I
the
bet
plan.
it was.
I was going to retire and enjoy I have 5 granddaughters. I was going to enjoy them until Motion M103 came around. And yeah, I have thought a lot about evil. And I think the scariest thing about evil is that the people who perpetrated many cases think they're doing the right thing. And they get into this mindset where the end justifies the means. And once you're in that mindset, and you've lost hold of principles in your life that guide your life, once you've lost those principles, you're capable of anything. And like the people I talked about, the 9/11 folks, they thought they were doing the right thing. And if you look into their background, what they were taught, what they learned, what they believed
were
in,
sacrificing themselves for, they felt, some greater good or something.
They're going to paradise. And
Right.
So evil to a large extent is conducted by people who think they're doing the right thing, who've lost hold of the principles that are capable of making a positive life. They've lost those. The end justifies the means. But then there is also a very, very small minority, I believe, that there's evil out there that can't use that excuse. That there's evil out there that is in a continuous state of rebellion against authority, They don't like to be constrained. They don't like rules. They want to make things. They want to bend things to their own will. And these people are really capable of anything, because a lot of them are very, very smart people. And I think these days a lot of them are very, very rich too. So I think
Do you know, I
uh,
appreciate groups like yourselves that are giving an opportunity for people that love justice and love righteousness to get together. And so, this Canadian Citizens for Charter Rights and Freedoms, you're saying that now there's about 40,000 and you're looking for more, I guess.
oh, you bet. Yeah, we want everybody to join in the conversation. We want everybody to talk about freedom and liberty around the water cooler. We want everyone to talk to their MPs, to talk to their political representatives. And this should be the ballot box question on this next election. It shouldn't be about daycare. It shouldn't be about even the Wuhan virus. It should be about our rights and freedoms, and let's get them back. Is what this next election should all be about, and that's what I'll be pushing for as much as I can until the election takes place.
Right. I mean, as you have seen, and you've known Canada an awful long time, did you ever see, you think you'd see the day, when pastors are thrown in jail while criminals are released from jail, all for the same reason, under the same guise of COVID?
Yeah. No, I never thought that. When I was in combat, I really believed that I was fighting on the side of good to kick evil and tyrants out of Kuwait, and I still believe that to be the case. But I never thought Canada, being that kind of a country that would make that kind of commitment and ask people like me to do that kind of a thing on behalf of freedom. I never thought Canada would turn around and be this country where they're tracking down pastors, throwing them in the back of squad cars like sides of beef, putting them in jail for weeks and weeks at a time, and at the same time allowing people to rampage in downtown areas, have protests without masks. I'm thinking BLM back more than a summer ago. And we have one set of rules for these people, and we have another set of rules for, it looks like Christian pastors. So I'm thinking, what's going on here? This looks like it's almost like a religious war.
Yep.
Um,
And we've seen the hypocrisy in the United States and in Canada. And, Barack Obama just had his 60th birthday party, and all the cool people are there. Apparently not Biden. I thought Biden would be one of his best friends, but,
no.
Biden didn't make it to Barack Obama's birthday party because really, I mean, he's just a huge pawn in all of this. But all the cool people were there. There was no social distancing, a whole lot of dancing and whatnot, and apparently there's some breakout in the Martha's Vineyard area or something of COVID.
I saw that today.
Right.
I saw that today.
Yeah,
I guess they were. I saw the CNN reported on the birthday bash, and they said, "Well, there's no problem here because everybody is sophisticated."
Right, so
I
they're
guess
sophisticated because they're
sophisticated.
vaccinated. Right.
They're vaccinated. They're sophisticated.
The
No outbreak here. And then the
sophisticated
next day,
bunch.
you read, I think there was 48 people reported into the hospital or something like that. Yeah, yeah. So one set of rules for you, one set of
Right.
rules for me. And
Right.
that's not the way it's supposed to work. It's like I say in the Charter's preamble, we are a nation that believes in the supremacy of God and the rule of law. And the rule of law means that everyone is treated equally under the law.
Yes.
And we need to get back to that and get back to it quick.
Get back to it quick. And so you advocate for everyone to stand up as we close. Canadians need to basically, much like our first guest today, whatever sphere you're in, do not
Yeah.
comply with the crazy.
Yeah, because I can assure you that the cavalry is not coming over the hill to save us. A lot of people have been thinking, "Oh, this is just dumb. This doesn't make any sense. We're going to get saved by the RCMP, by the press is going to start asking questions. The justice system will kick in and sort all this stuff out." That's not happening because the cavalry, in the form of our institutions, are not there to save us. The way things are working these days, it looks like they're even on the other side. So it's up to us as individuals to stand up and start squawking and start putting some pressure on our leaders and our political process. And this election should be the ballot box question should be, we want our rights and freedoms back. First and foremost, get that done first.
I agree with you. When I look at the, the landscape politically, though, I mean, it's looking like Trudeau's unstoppable right now. The Conservative Party is somewhat fractured, and it needs to be, because the Conservative Party has been become almost sort of liberal light.
Liberal light. Liberal light.
And so it's a bit of a, mosh posh about what's going to happen. And then if we've got more years of Trudeau, a lot of us just saying, Lord help us. But, maybe that's all part of it, is we do get awakened, and then we do start to stand more. And that's not a bad thing.
And I think along those lines, Laura Lynn, we need to, if we can't put a government in power, then we certainly can put disruptors in place. We can start voting for the person that we're sending to Parliament instead of the party. The person we want to send to Parliament is a principled person who believes in fundamental rights and freedoms, who will protect those and fight for those. Those are the kind of people we want in, and they could be from any party. They might be liberals, they might be conservatives, they might come from the Christian Heritage Party, or they might come from the PPC. But it's the individual that we need to put in place to make disruption happen.
That's
and
right.
Instead of having, we're ruled by parties now. We're supposed to be a responsible government, responsible democracy with responsible representatives who represent us. And what's happening now is they've been usurped, they've been absorbed by the party systems, and they're doing the party's work instead of our work. And that has to change. We have to put people in there who can disrupt that whole process.
Absolutely. Well, Major Russ Cooper, you are a very, very good man, and I'm grateful that Canada has you in our nation, and I'm grateful for what you're involved in. And I really thank you that at a season in life when you could be taking it easy and going, well, I'll leave it to the young kids. You've got the energy and the capacity and the experience to put all of that actually maybe into your greatest battle, and that's saving Canada. And I just thank you for the price that you're paying to do that. I realize that it's probably not easy.
Well, thank you very much, Laura Lynn. It's been a real pleasure being on your program. And I've been a big fan of yours for quite a while now, so for me, it's a special pleasure.
Okay, well, that's really nice. I thank you so much, and I'm a big fan of yours now. Thank you, sir. We'll see you again.
Okay. Okay, Laura Lynn. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.